All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and to all. I want to wish everyone a happy Marine Corps birthday. And I want to introduce a good friend of mine. His name is Jason. And I'll leave it with that. And Jason, please tell everybody who you are, and then we'll keep on going, okay? I just want to make sure all the audio was taken care of. All right? Go for it, my man.
Well, it's James.
Sorry, James. Sorry.
That's okay. James. Anyway, I like to just think I'm just a normal guy, but people keep telling me that I'm a special person. Try not to believe that. Try to keep my ego down. Served 23 years in the military. Did 5 years in the Marine Corps in recon. Served in Desert Storm, and then did about 18 plus years in the Navy as an intelligence officer, leveraging my experiences as a Marine. Did 3 tours in Afghanistan, deployments to Iraq, Ethiopia, Somalia, and then got out of the military after 23 years and started a risk advisory firm that I've been running now for the past 7-8 years. So it's kind of who I am. Happy to answer any questions and provide a little more information if you need be.
So I apologize. I call you Jason, but hey, James. My name is Hiram Figueroa. I am the host of LinkedIn Perspective. And if you like the segment of LinkedIn Perspective, share it, like it, tag it. The whole purpose of this is a virtual town hall podcast broadcast to be able to bring to you, to the subscribers, not only on LinkedIn Live, but on YouTube, Facebook as well, for individuals that can relate to some occurring events. So today we're celebrating the Marine Corps birthday, right? Myself, I've been a supporter of the Marine Corps Recon Foundation and the Raider Foundation. But the biggest thing I want to be able to share with you is the opportunities to be able to talk to James, who wrote a book. And James has a significant book that's going to be pretty much good content. So James, you have the book with you. Do you have the cover so we can share it and then talk about your book? And let's go for it, man. Okay?
I do. It's hopefully there's shiny, right? But anyway, it's called the War Journal, and I named it because when I was in Desert Storm, I actually wrote in a journal every day or two. I received a care package, in December, and it had an empty journal with a pen. It's from a girl that I had known, and she said, "Please write in the journal so I can see the war through your eyes when you come home." And what I did was I wrote in the journal every day or whenever I could about the events that were happening and how they impacted me or unknowingly impacting me. And the interesting part about the book is when I left Desert Storm in the Marine Corps, I really didn't look at the book. It sat on a bookshelf. It got moved around when I moved houses. And it was unfortunate because if I had read what I had written while I was in Desert Storm, I think it would have helped me throughout my life. And when I was doing a podcast, I introduced the War Journal to the podcast host. She sent it to her publicist, and the publicist called me within a couple hours and said, "Mr. Sisco, you have a #1 bestseller here." And I'm like, what are you talking about? She says, "You need to write this book." And I wrote the book within a month and a half, 2 months. It was published, and within a week, it became a bestseller on Amazon.
So tell them more about what's going on with the book. What's the whole purpose behind the book? A lot of people don't understand. And here's the thing, because we're both Marines, right? We come from supporting different levels of the community, right? But the biggest thing that people need to understand that there's a big difference between serving the Persian Gulf, like we both did, to Afghanistan, to then exiting out, going through transition states and having a lot of thoughts that you put on paper, correct?
Yeah, there are. The reason I was compelled to write the book after I had shared it with the publicist, because there were some critical life lessons that I learned during Desert Storm. And these life lessons dealing with faith and education and, religion, excuse me, they're universal. They're not just for veterans or Marines. These life lessons can be taken by anyone. They transcend gender, race, ethnicity. And, the people who have read the book and the feedback I've gotten, or some of them are like, hey, when my children are old enough, I'm going to make them read this book. Or, hey, Jim, what you said, what you learned about adversity and discipline and these things were really insightful for me. I think I'll share with you the best compliment, and I don't know, call it a compliment I received, but I was at home one night. I was by myself. The phone rang, and you know how it is when you look at the phone number, you don't know who it is. It's kind of Russian roulette.
Mm-hmm.
I just answered the phone, and I said, "Good evening, Jim Sisco." And the voice on the other end said, "Hey, Mr. Sisco, I hope you don't mind me calling you. I got the number from Marianne Petrie's podcast, and do you have a minute to talk?" And I said, "Oh yeah, sure." He said, "Hey, I read your book, and I just want to tell you that I really appreciate you writing the book. Thank you. I served in Iraq, and I've been going through a really difficult time in my life. I'm in a very dark period. I was considering suicide, and after reading your book, I've changed my mind. I really have purpose and meaning, and thank you very much." I really didn't know what to say. I was so taken aback by that. But that right there is probably the best thing about the book, in my opinion.
So what do you want people to know about the book, and what do they need? What do you want people to understand? What was your purpose behind that book to be able to make it a bestseller on Amazon?
The purpose really is that veterans, active duty military, reservists, first responders, a lot of people are facing trauma or have faced trauma in their lives. They're suffering from mental health issues, PTSD, TBIs, all of these different things that are impacting people in today's society. And reading this book will enable them or allow them, hopefully, to understand how to deal with it. Because the trauma that I experienced and how it impacted me, I never had anybody to talk to. In 1991, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I got back from Desert Storm. I was involuntarily extended. So 5 days after my return from Desert Storm, I was EAOS. I was out. There was no counselors. There was no medical examinations. It was, here's your dental records. Here's your medical records. Peace out. And that's changed dramatically, but there's still there's issues that veterans face that are unaddressed. And a lot of this is covered in the book, or some of it is covered in the book.
So, you can say that it's pretty relatable, right? And we've talked about it because I came out of that era, and you're right. It was like we didn't have social media. It was like a landline. Here's your discharge papers. See you later. Talk to you later. Don't let the door hit you in your ass on the way out. And that's it. They're done with you. But the biggest thing that I can honestly say is this, right? Moving forward 20, 30 years ago, right? You can say 30 something years ago, close to it, something like that. We can see that it's drastically changed for a number of reasons. But here's the thing, right? There's so many people that are advocating for veterans and veterans' rights and writing books and everything else. But let's be honest, James, in your life journey of what's going on, what have you seen since your experience and career in both branches, right? From the Marine Corps, Special Operations, to the Navy, intelligence side. And can you more or less touch on how much of a difference in the significance of intensity when you're being deployed from Persian Gulf to Afghanistan, since you did that?
Yeah, I'm gonna just say that I joined the Marine Corps in 1986, and it was a totally different world. When I deployed to Desert Storm, it was December 1990, and it was a totally different world. There was no internet. There were no cell phones. There's no social media. I'm still writing letters home and receiving care packages. The environment was different. When you deployed to Desert Storm, there was no hot meals and chow halls and green bean coffees or Burger Kings. My last deployment in Afghanistan, I was at a high staff headquarters, and I would go into the chow hall at ISAF, and there was like gourmet meals. You had steak and lobster night. You didn't really deploy in a way where you're out in the field 24/7. I mean, imagine being on a forward operating base, moving every day or two for 3 months straight, not going back. I went 40 something days without a shower. So the soldiers and who are fighting in today's war, even with me, when I was assigned to SOCOM and JSOC, and I would deploy with ODA teams and on missions, we would go up in up armored Humvees or MRAPs. We would be back every night having having a shower. There was air conditioning in the barracks. Go back Desert Storm. We're in a 30-man tent with 20-something guys in gear, and our fun time is spent, killing flies and having scorpion fights. There's no air conditioning, so it's a totally different environment. I remember, and I never forget this. I'm in Balad, and I'm walking through the base. There's two women soldiers with their M4 strapped on their back, and they're deciding whether they're going to go get their hair done or they're going to watch a movie that night. So that's not combat, in my opinion. And I look back at my time in Desert Storm, and I marvel at the soldiers who were in World War I and World War II, Vietnam and Korea. And what I experienced in Desert Storm, in my opinion, pales in comparison to what they did. But then when I deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq, that pales in comparison to what I experienced in Desert Storm.
So how much of a significant trauma, right? Because you're right. I came up in the areas where the CP tent is 30 guys in there. The outhouse is out there. Showers, good luck. You get some soap and water, will do something. And as far as, killing time is, chasing rabbits. I remember we were out in the desert chasing rabbit. There's like 50 of us who can catch the rabbit in 124 heat and catching rattlesnakes. So I believe that a lot of people really don't understand the significance when you're on a op for like 40 days out there versus, hey, I can come back and go to an air-conditioned hut, right? And I can have a heated chow versus MREs, or we start improvising, becoming our own Hell's Kitchen, being to do that.
Let me add to that and just say this: the physical toll, emotional toll, and psychological toll that it has on you can't be described. And this book does it in a really good way because you live through my journal entries, and you understand how this impacted me and how the evolution over time. You can see it gets worse. You can see, like, in the beginning, very upbeat. Hey, I'm out. I'm getting burlap bags for our camouflage and ghillie suit. Then we move forward to the border. We start doing missions. We're moving every day. 3 o'clock in the morning, moving. We're on night shift. We're on day shift, and just as well as I do. You're on watch, and you always have watch. And then there's stand 2 and stand down, where you have to get to 100% security. All these things take a toll, and over time it impacts you. And I will read a couple excerpts from the book to help people understand.
Go ahead.
So here's one on December 28th. Today we moved across this large flat desert to a new home, rather spacious in this open desert. We now have a 20-man tent with 23 people and their gear. Not a pleasant sight. Not to mention the fact that our sleep is so erratic these days, I don't know if I'm sleeping at night or working all day or vice versa. The only course of action is to take sleep whenever you can.
So sleep deprivation was very much significant, with the psychological and the emotional, not only the physical aspect that people don't really understand, right? They think that they watch these war movies, or they watch these. I got a good buddy. He's on a TV series Selection. It's on Fox, right? You take these movie stars, these reality shows, these basketball stars, you put them in Selection, and this is all glory. But behind that, we pay our dues because there's a lot of stress involved, and people don't understand the mindset. Correct?
Yeah, I'm going to read this one more, and I think it's because I want to just make everybody know this book is not a dark book, and it's not all about combat, and it's not all about. There's some funny stories and vignettes that happened. As you know, in deployments, you have some really funny things happen throughout the deployment, and those things are really helpful to keep your spirit and the camaraderie, obviously. But December 29th, I am awakened to the call of reveille at 05:45. Then minutes later, told I can sleep until 12:45. Great, huh? No, duty takes its ugly toll again at 07. Walking around 5 parked vehicles or 3 tents only 100 feet apart. Marine Corps logic in action again. I just returned from church, which even that has become Marine Corps orientated. After that, cutting burlap sacks to crawl through the desert and not be seen. Tonight will be spent taking the boots on a night compass course. Yeah, right. Oh, here is the ticket puncher, as Lieutenant might say. If you are standing duty, the only time you can lock and load is if a Marine's life is in immediate danger. So you better have a piece of your uniform missing if you shoot a wild dog that might attack you, stated the company gunnery sergeant. I'm sure you can find humor in that.
I can find a lot of humor on that, and people don't really understand why that dark humor is, or the humor needs that. People don't understand that you need that type of, humor to break the monotony, because it's chaotic. It's already chaotic as it is, and sometimes people do stupid things and win stupid prizes. I mean, that's how it is, And for the most part, but the biggest thing that I can say is this, right? You're with this book. This book means a lot. Today, this is like 30 something years now. You're at a different point in your life. How do you see yourself versus now, and what does this book mean to you now that you publicize it?
Yeah, listen, when I wrote this book, I was that stereotypical Marine, 180 pounds of spring steel and sex appeal, totally Kevlar. I was impenetrable. I could take on the world, and I still am in a way. However, I've realized a lot since then about myself and my life and who I am. And I go back to this one passage that really captures how I felt at that moment. And this is after the ground war had ended. I was in my little fob right off the border, really doing some self-reflection, had been drinking some Jack Daniels and smoking some Marlboro Red cigarettes. And I wrote in my journal, today we saw our third mission, which was to go back where we were the day before and look the area over for any POWs we might have missed and weapons that might have been left behind. Sounds pretty good, huh? Well, we weren't allowed to leave our vehicles, so how does one complete this mission? As I stand here and listen to Pink Floyd, the war as I know it is now over. I had one of those yellow Sony Walkman CDs, and way back then, listened to Dark Side of the Moon. Rumors of leaving are already being spread. My thoughts of the future are still blurry, but I must accomplish a couple things. It was at that point I really just didn't know what to write, and just had a couple more drinks, a couple more cigarettes, and all of a sudden, with this clarity that was unbelievable, I wrote this. I must enter again and try to tell you how I feel. I don't think anyone was really changed by this. Maybe they think they have, but not really. I know I have aged in years that cannot be counted on my face, but I can see. I have felt pain that I should not forget, so I will write to remind me in case I do. Don't forget the pain you have felt in death, betrayal, stress, and hatred. Know that there is a woman out there that will love you as much as you will love her, and be happy and never need another forever. Also, find education because it can never be taken away from you. Thank you, God, for listening to my thoughts. I feel for once in my life you were watching. Just remember. So that right there was, everything that had transpired, and I really have to talk about one of the things that happened during the deployment that really impacted me. But at that moment, I had this clarity and I was able to see things. And really, the big takeaway about the critical life lessons in the book: education, faith, money, relationships. And those are what I write to. And that's kind of, hopefully, that answered your question.
So you're living life. It did. And so now, you know, you're Mr. James Sisco, right? You're not in the military. How is that relatable, and how do you find it in your path of life, reinventing yourself and dealing with civilian life in transition?
The lessons I learned, I didn't apply. And it took me years to go back and realize, and writing the book helped. The biggest piece of advice I give to people now, and this is relatable in the civilian world, is every day I try to build my human capital. I try to be a good person. I try to lean into faith. I value education. These things, when you're young, you don't appreciate, including being physically fit and emotionally healthy. You don't think about these things when you're young. For me, I was just partying and having fun, and I was just trying to hook up with chicks. And if I had built my human capital then, or had worked on my human capital then, I would have been further ahead in my life than I am now. And that's my biggest regret, and the biggest thing I try to educate people to.
You're not the only one. We're in that same scope of work, right? We go in with a perception to be our own hero, to be recognized, to be validated, that we belong to a certain tier level in the military. But moving forward, right, there's a lot of missteps that are happening of personal development, spiritual awareness, accountability, markability. And the other thing is to be able to sustain life, because between you and me, right, so many people have quit on life and they've checked out. They've done a lot of stuff. They've had significant personal problems. We talked off stage, and more or less we share our personal issues. And I think that people need to understand that we all have personal issues, but now the key thing is knowing how to deal with it, who can you talk to, and how you're going to be able to be receptive, being pointing the finger that you're a bad person, or okay, you did something, now you take accountability. How do you change the narrative to that?
Yeah, here's what I would say to this. I experienced this personally. When you're in a situation, and I'll just share with everybody, I went through a really contentious divorce, and I'm still going through a custody battle. And when you're under the microscope and scrutiny of lawyers and judges and therapists and counselors, you start doubting yourself, and you start listening to these words. I met with a lawyer one time. I spoke with him for 15 minutes, and he said, "You're fucked up. You have PTSD." And I was like, wow. But if you start doubting yourself, you'll go down this really slippery slope, and it could go to a really dark place. And I almost went there. And fortunately for me, I had the discipline, I had the fortitude, and I had resources behind me, good friends, family to help me. Jim, this is not who you are. These attacks on you, this character assassination, don't let it bother you. Don't let it impact you. And the other thing is the trauma. I don't want to say trauma. Everybody likes to use that word.
Yeah.
And trauma is real, but it's on a spectrum. You can have real trauma, or you can have trauma and you say, "Oh, I have PTSD because I didn't get my eggs in the chow hall," or something like that.
Something like that, right?
And I would say the trauma that I experienced in my military career really set the stage for later in life, because if I can overcome some of the things that happened to me while I was on active duty, I can easily overcome the things that are happening to me in the civilian world.
Well, here's a good thing, right? We both have PTSD. I have CPTSD. So here's the thing: when people say we're fucked up, you said they're quick to judge, but they're not living our story, right? So I just created a post and I put it on LinkedIn. I say I call myself out. I have PTSD, and two things happen in when you take accountability, right? And you say it's like a recovering alcoholic. Hey, I got this. That's who I am. I'm not broken. I'm broken to a point, but I'm functional. So people really think, well, they have a perception of PTSD, but now the significance of PTSD today is nothing like it was many years ago. And people don't understand that stuff never gets away from you. You have to learn how to function in a way that it's acceptable, not only for yourself, but in society. Not only in society, but in the business world, because there are people that say, oh, you have PTSD, he's psycho. It's, they're already categorized, they're putting you in suspect. He's psycho, he might go off, he might be an actor. You don't know that. And the thing about it is that unless you've taken a class, unless you've educated yourself, or you've been around people that support, then can you relate to? Because we're just as smart as everybody else. The only problem is we got something that we can't get rid of, and we got to live on it, So for us, it's paramount. And I think that you calling it out, I calling it out is important. But the biggest thing is, I think society doesn't understand how significant it is, right?
Yeah, or the impact on your daily life, on your interactions, your relationships, with women, with friends, with family. And what I'd like to do right now is I want to share the part of the book that really is the dark side, and then I think everybody will have an understanding of where I am in the spectrum and how I dealt with it, and I could talk about that. February 22nd, 1991. Yesterday, Cook died by a hand grenade. It was an eye-opener for a lot of people. The boom sounded, and I ran down to see Cook in pieces. His arms blown off, face black with powder burn, leg hanging on by his pants. It was a sight that is in and will be in my mind forever. Let me give a little background on this. So we had just came off our first mission. We're sitting in a group. I'm sitting next to Mike, and we're looking at mail, eating, and Lance Corporal Stroud goes, "Hey, Corporal Sisco, can you help me with the KY gear?" And I looked over, typical Marine. I'm like, "Fuck you! What are you, a retard? Do it yourself." And everybody started laughing. And Mike looked at me and said, "Bad dog." And I looked at him and laughed. And I got up and I walked over and started helping Stroud with the KY gear in the back of the Humvee about 20 feet away. Within about 45 seconds, that's when the hand grenade exploded. Mike had his 782 gear on. We had grenades. We always took the thumb clips off. He straightened out the pin, probably got caught on something, fell between his legs, blew up. I ran over. I was the first person on the scene. The other guys were, got shrapnel, so they were screaming and yelling. And I just stood there and looked at them. And all of a sudden, like, the corpsman knocked me out. And I could do trachs and IVs and some medical procedure. But I looked at him, and I knew there's nothing I could do. Corpsman knocked me out of the way. Within a couple minutes, he was on a medevac helo with the other guys. I would have been there next to him. I probably would have been dead. And, when somebody dies, you have to separate their personal gear from their military stuff. And then you have to take the personal gear and send it home. And, I volunteered since I was friends with Mike. I volunteered to do that. And since I was like, wow, that could have been me, I felt some purpose that I needed to do that. And I'm going through all his gear. I have and when somebody blows up by a hand grenade, it's not like the movies. It's all blood and guts. It's so much heat that there's pieces of flesh and bone and there's not a lot of blood, and it's all like just this odor. And I'm going through all the gear, and my hands have all this stuff on it, and I'm writing down everything on a list. And I get to his wallet, I'm like $20 in cash, a Pennsylvania driver's license, social security card. And I go into one of the compartments and I pull out a picture, and I look at the picture, and it was my girlfriend. And on the back, it said, "Love, Ashley." And I stood there and my hands started actually shaking. I didn't know what to do. The guy who was standing there, I think it was like a staff sergeant, was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just give me a minute." And I walked away, and I experienced a feeling that I never wish anybody ever experienced. One of your friends dies, you're overcome with that emotion. You are glad that you for some reason you weren't killed. You're like, you could have been right there. And then in the next moment, you want to kill him because you just found a picture of your girlfriend. And that's why I talk about betrayal and hate and those things, because that emotion that I felt at that moment was something that I would never wish upon my greatest enemy.
So, man, that is deep. It's a twofold situation, right? You witness this, and then you get this, and I know it's after the fact, but were you still dating her, and then this was like on the down low, or what was going on with this girlfriend situation?
So I finished doing all the personal gear. I go back to my hooch, which was a hole in the ground with a poncho over it. I just start pounding some Jack Daniels, smoking cigarettes constantly. I get my 9 mil. I go over to Kuntz's hole, and I'm livid. And I take my gun out, and I'm like, "You better fucking tell me right now." And he's going crazy, and put the gun down, put the gun down. And I laugh about it now, but he said, "Okay, I'll tell you." And so some of our mutual friends knew that she was cheating on me with him, and nobody wanted to tell me. He didn't want to tell me, but so that came out. And then I went home, I confronted her on it, and it was over. And what I want people to understand is the way I dealt with that was I compartmentalized everything. Just like the war journal got shut and put on a bookshelf, never to be read for 20 something years, so were my emotions, I thought, were compartmentalized. But as I look back, that had such an impact on my relationships with women, my relationships with friends, my ability to trust. So I didn't really suffer the PTSD symptoms of nightmares and anxiety attacks because I compartmentalized it, but it definitely had an impact on these other aspects of my life.
So here's the thing, right? People don't understand that these are certain triggers that happen because this is a very traumatic situation, right? And people don't really understand the significance of what we go through. And this is like you're dealing with something that's real world, then you go home to dealing with a soap opera situation that people can only see on the soap operas, but it's real life. And then people expect you to get over it, right? And and you forgive yourself, but you really never get over it, because it puts a staple to saying that it sets the platform for dealing with other people in that scenario, because you already been battle tested with that scenario that has happened. Correct?
Yes, I would agree, but to add to that, it's hard for some people. It was hard for me to realize uh, those things and how they impacted me. Dealing with the minor trivial things in daily life were very easy and simple.
Hmm.
After my other tours in Afghanistan, I was in combat situations, and what I learned and drew upon was that in these really chaotic environments, I became very calm and was able to focus. And the same thing happens when I'm dealing with these issues that I'm dealing with in my life. I just get very calm. I don't get angry and fired up. But there is this always that side that in a minute I'm ready to fight because that's ingrained in my nature. But it's really being able to control that, which is really important.
So here you are today, sharing a little bit of its inserts about your book. So now, who's James and what is James doing today?
Well, that is, I wish I could answer that. And here's why. I wrote not only wrote this, this book, but I wrote a manuscript. And the manuscript is 3 full seasons that can be produced into a Netflix miniseries or a miniseries on Peacock or wherever. And in the beginning of that, I talk about, and the title is just called Jim. And it talks about Jim's identity. My identity transformed throughout my life. First I was a Marine, then I was, a college student, and then I became a naval intelligence officer. Then I became a businessman, and then I became a father. And that the whole time I've always been an athlete and playing rugby. And after the divorce and custody issue, it really made me think, what is my identity? What is my purpose? What is my meaning in life? And Jim's identity is still being transformed. Jim's identity, is always going to be a father. He's no longer a husband, but a businessman, entrepreneur, writer. And I'm looking forward to the next evolution of my identity and where that takes me. And I think right now what I'm doing is trying to take my time and resources and experience and knowledge and mentor and give back, because I really believe time is the most precious thing that we have in our life. And if I can give my time to help other people, that will be my legacy more than anything else.
That's a great narrative. So let me ask you this: through all this, I know you have developed some non-negotiables in your life at this point. What are any of them you can share?
I, I do. And one of the things that my business partner and I, we say is, you can't fix stupid. And one of the biggest non-negotiables for me is, I can't fix stupid. I can't fight ignorance. Um, I served 23 years, so we have our individual rights and freedoms, and people can express their opinions, and they have a right to do so. But it doesn't mean that I have to accept their opinions. And this looks at what's happening across our society. Even look at what's going on between Israel and Palestine, and how we have protests, and we have people who are uninformed about, really, really deep issues, and they're expressing their opinions. So when people try to express their opinions and beliefs on me, that's a no-go for me. You want to have a civil discourse and you want to be able to share ideas and opinions, I'm up for it any day of the week. But don't force your rhetoric on me. And I think that is one of the biggest things for me in my life, is that I have no tolerance for ignorance.
So with that being said, the identity of the process, a lot of people are misinformed about how we live and how we continue to be successful. What would you like to let the people know of, your story of how it is that you've been continuing to develop yourself? And what's the misconception about us veterans, with PTSD or stupid stuff like that?
The first part of that question I'll answer like this. I have a basic philosophy, which is, if I can maintain control of 80% of the things around me, I'm in a good place. People let life overwhelm them, whether it's bills, social media, doom scrolling, all of these things impact them. And at a point, it overwhelms them. And if you can maintain control of 80% of the things you do and what you think about, like, I go to the gym, I'm very disciplined. I worry about my physical health, my emotional well-being, my happiness, and I control that. Where a lot of people, they let all of these external forces control them. And that really is a terrible thing, because then you're chasing life and not living life. With regard to the second part of your question, I wish that people would recognize that PTSD is different for each individual,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
that PTSD shouldn't be looked at in an ailment or a disability. It is really something that people sometimes struggle with, but is manageable. If you're on the really bad end of the spectrum, where you have to be medicated, you can't work, it impacts your relationships, your ability to concentrate, focus, all of these things. That is something that is much different than the individual like you and me who have PTSD, that sometimes are triggered by events or activities, more on the uh, physical and emotional spectrum. If I hear a loud bang, do I immediately jump to the floor and take cover? No.
Yeah.
When somebody attacks my identity, do I get triggered and respond? Yeah. Is that
Mm-hmm.
a lack of self-awareness? No, I'm acutely aware of what I say and how it impacts other people. I just don't care because I'd rather be able to express what I feel. And I wish that people would understand the full spectrum of PTSD and be able to accept it not as a disability, but as just something that you have to deal with.
I have a nephew. He was in the army, right? He was in Fallujah. And, we talked. And he was just on here, just he's a command sergeant major. We talked about scenarios about it. And I think that, like you said, we have certain levels of PTSD that we can only that we understand, right? There's non-negotiables of PTSD. People don't really understand the significance of PTSD. They think they can diagnose or they can profile somebody with PTSD, but they don't understand when a scenario, an episode happens, they think we're going to be an active shooter. No, there's certain things that will remind you of the traumatic or something of a dark place that you could be questioned, or your character could be triggered by that, and then the integrity of it, because we've held ourselves to a high standard. And today, as I talked about, today's the Marine Corps birthday, 248 years of being the Marine Corps, right? And now tomorrow's Veterans Day. But here's the thing: everybody's celebrating, but nobody's really paying attention to everybody else who has served. They haven't paid attention to, hey, how can I help you? Well, what is it like to serve? And what is it having PTSD versus, oh, you're fucked up, excuse my language, and you have PTSD? How do you justify talking to people? Or, oh, well, this ain't the military when you're working, right? You can't bring your military in mind. It's very hypocritical in the business sense, from a corporate side and the business side, to be able to pass judgment to military people, especially people like you and myself, to understand how is it that we are able to survive, but at the same time, they don't get it. I know you want to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna just tell you. I posted on LinkedIn today, and it was a report, an analysis that my company produced, and it's called Voices of Veterans. And what you said resonated because there is such a disconnect between what veterans think are the challenges and issues they face with regard to what their immediate family and friends think to the veteran community to civilians.
Mm-hmm.
That report clearly illustrated the divide. And the problem is you have policymakers, you have organizations like Wounded Warrior Project, Stop Soldier Suicide, all of these. I mean, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a veterans nonprofit these days. And what we've seen is in this report highlights and illustrates is that you have these decision makers, policymakers, legislators, NGOs, all fighting for money, fighting for their own agendas, fighting for a piece of the pie.
Yep.
And what's overlooked is what the veterans actually want and need. And that report really spells it out for everybody. And that same example goes for what you said. People have this idea or belief of what the military experience is like or what PTSD is, and they can't really experience it. And going back to the book, I received an email, and I wish I could pull it up, from a counselor who worked with Wounded Warrior Project. And in her email, she said, "Hey, Jim, I just finished reading your book. Thank you for writing it. I now have a better understanding of how I should interact with the individuals that I'm counseling."
Mm-hmm.
So that therein lies, the problem or part of the problem.
Here's my thing, right? And this is where I get real tough about it. I mean, I used to do a lot of podcasts, and then people would reach out to this, and I got to share that there's a moral to the story, right? Nonprofit organizations, I support veterans. You don't support veterans because you're leveraging an opportunity to get money funding for your own self, for your self-gratification. Because if you did, you'd be helping the veterans that really need the help, that have no resources to come to. The other factor is it's only, excuse me, it's only beneficial for you when you think you're doing something that's self-gratification. At the end of the day, you and I, we live our separate lives. We still deal with the BS. My thing, I don't know why I'm coughing, is that people need to understand that you can't figure us out. You might as well accept it. And the thing about it is, if you can accept us fighting for your freedom, then you can accept us with damaged goods. And the thing about it is people don't want to deal with it because it ain't their story. But the minute it becomes their story, they're crying a river to ask us for help. And how are we going to help us? I'll give it to you right back. How are we going to help each other if we're too busy eating our own? Go ahead.
So the first thing I want to say is I don't view you or me or any other veteran as damaged goods. We all have our own issues that we deal with, but we're all human beings. And I know some people who never served in the military are 10 times more screwed up than any of the veterans that I've dealt with who have mental health issues, PTSD or TBIs. The other part of this is you are spot on. I have a TikTok channel, and I had surgery on my shoulder, and going through the divorce and custody issues, and I started reaching out to people, to organizations for help. And I can tell you, I was more disappointed at that time. And I even posted a TikTok video where I had just gotten out of the hospital and I had my shoulder in a brace and everything. And guess what? Nobody cared. Nobody was listening. As veterans, we are really on our own. And everybody's out there, "Oh, I want to help a veteran. I want to help. We set up an organization." And then when you reach out, all you get is, "Here's an email for a link," or, "Hey, have you tried this?" or, "Here's a 1-800 number." And I've literally gone to veterans who need help and be like, "You need a place to stay? You can come stay in my house. Hey, do you need this? I can do this. Hey, you need a job? Let me help you find a job." That's what veterans need. This is what those organizations should be doing. We also did a report on Wounded Warrior Project that showed, what they're doing. And I've seen, we're going to host an event, a gala event, and we're going to do a fundraiser. And 80% of the donations were used to pay for the event, cater the event, pay for the airline tickets, pay for the hotel accommodations. And the salaries that these people get are exorbitant.
Yep.
I'm actually going to apply to be the next president or the CEO of Wounded Warrior Project. I know the current president, he's going to be leaving in a little while, and I'm going to apply. And I hope to God that I become the next CEO of Wounded Warrior Project.
Well, let me put it to you this way: you become that CEO, then we'll do something bigger. Because here's the thing that people don't really understand, right? I can honestly tell you this, right? We are hurting every day. We are hurting every freaking day. And it blows my mind how people are very influential in social media because they're cloud chasers, but they're just digital people that have just like the stuff. Now, when it comes to us having a come to Jesus meeting and breaking bread, like, hey, you know, you messed up today, James. What are you going to do about it? You know, I heard what you did, but now let's talk about it. That's the kind of accountability that people need to understand. That's the kind of platform that people need to follow. And sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. They just want to play stupid games and win stupid prizes and feel all warm and fuzzy because they name dropping. Social media has changed the narrative to two things. It's good for the good and it's good for the bad. Here's what it is. You start feeling people, they only relate to their reality through social media. But between you and me, we've been living this for the last 20, 30 years, and people need that. Go ahead.
This is a great point because my business partner and we started a podcast a couple weeks ago, and one of the episodes we talk about influencers. We talk about how social media companies, the algorithms they create, these experts, and especially after COVID, where everybody took towards social media and, the explosion of TikTok and Instagram and Facebook Live. Everybody wants to be a content creator. Everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody's an expert. For myself, I'm 55 years old. I have an undergraduate degree in economics and political science. I have a master's degree in strategic intelligence. I've deployed around the world. I've lived in foreign countries. I speak Dari. I've been the military liaison for President Karzai. I worked for General McChrystal, General Petraeus. I worked at the Office of Director of National Intelligence as a subject matter expert on Southeast Asia. I don't consider myself an expert. And to have people like a 22-year-old kid, a 25-year-old man or woman on social media with 1.2 million followers because they can throw a can upside down and it lands the right way, or somebody selling their farts in a can. This is where our society has, and it's important to create a platform and to help people and be able to talk about life experiences. But where are we at when some 22-year-old kid is now an expert or an influencer?
Yeah, you'll hear some background. My wife's coming over, so but that's how it is. So, like, let's put it this way, right? I can't control the dogs. They get excited when they see their mom.
That's okay.
But here's the thing, right? It's important to understand that for myself, I've been on this platform since the beginning. Since the beginning. So two things that blow my mind is this. You're right. Million kids, they make all this money, but what are they bringing value to it? They've been able to do that. And here's the lack of priorities. Here we're talking about some serious issues, and it's like taboo. It's like the dirty little secret, and it's becoming the dirty little secret ever since we pulled out from Afghanistan. And I'll tell you that right now because people don't want to deal with it. They want to live a life of their own reality. And our reality is that we're sucking in on, we suck balls and everything else, but nobody wants to help us out. And here's a scenario where you and I do something, whether they follow us or not, but we're putting out the truth. So sometimes the truth, most of the time, the truth hurts. So people need to understand that so they can painfully understand that, hey, get out of your so-called reality. And this is the reality that we're dealing with because you think you know what you're talking about, but when it comes to our world, you don't. Go ahead.
Our society has evolved so much from when I was a kid and now as an adult. And I look at the children, I look at teenagers, I look at, as I call them, millennials. And it is really a society where you want that quick fix. You want that instant gratification. You're not willing to put in hard work and everything is given to you. There's this really idea of entitlement that happens. All of these things are part of the problem. I want to go make $1 million. I'll give you a quick funny. So I have a business, and every year we take in 2 or 3 interns, and at the end of the internship, we either reward the interns with a bonus, we offer them a full-time position, or we say, hey, thanks for your time. You were worthless. Thank you very much. And we had one female intern, and she was going to Colgate University. She was very full of herself. And we saw some potential, and we said, hey, we'd like to offer you a position with the company. And she literally said, well, I'm not negotiating unless there's an equity stake in the company. And I'm like, you're 21 years old and you're asking for an equity stake in the company. And I'm like, what is going on? But that's emblematic of where we're at in our society. And it's really hard because I don't know what's going to change it. I'm just going to continue to do what I do, and hopefully people will listen and they can learn a little from me. And I get another call that says, hey, I read your book, or I saw your podcast, and I was in a really dark place, and now I have purpose and meaning in my life. And that's the gratification I need.
We talk about our lives, our personal lives, and people don't realize that, our personal lives are very fragile, right? Because we've dealt with so much bullshit through the military. And then we come back into society and they expect us to be a cookie cutter of the typical civilian, and we're not. And the thing about it is when we go through our trials and tribulations of maintaining a marriage, supporting our kids, reinventing ourselves, people don't get it, right? They go like this. They're quick to judge, and they don't understand the significance of how is it that you're going to judge me when you haven't even walked in our pair of shoes, and you think you know everything, but here we are, but you want to support veterans, but you think you know more than we do. And you think you know more, that when you're going through the hiring process, we hire veterans, but you don't give them an opportunity to excel because they apply their leadership skills and principles to a different level that it's not conducive to your narrative. Correct?
I haven't experienced that as much as other people, because obviously I started my own company after I retired from the military, and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm very positive, and here's this is kind of like how I wanted to address this. People watch a podcast and they already formulate their opinions, kind of like what you're talking about. Hey, I just listened to this podcast for an hour. I listened to Jim and Haram talk, and man, they seemed dark. Man, they were depressing. Man, they were talking about some deep issues. They don't know you. They don't know me. They're quick to make judgment. If you know me like my friends know me, I am like one of the funnest guys to be around. I love to joke around, have fun. I play rugby. I'm 55 years old. I play rugby. I have a game tomorrow. I work out every day. I go to the gym. I mentor these younger guys. We go to McDonald's and have all you can eat contests. I mean, so there's a positive side to what I do and who I am also. And I think what you're getting at is really important. People are very quick to judge. Oh, he's a veteran. He has PTSD. I put him in this bucket. And they don't get a chance to know who they are, take a chance to get to know somebody. And everybody is like a Dr. Oz. They can figure out and diagnose everybody else's problems. Oh, I just listened to this podcast. He's a narcissist. Oh, he's got an ego. He's this. And I'm like, really good point. When you point your finger, remember, there's 3 more coming back at you. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding what their own issues are and project their issues on other people. So for me, I try to stay grounded. I try to stay happy. I try to have fun. I give people the benefit of the doubt. And that's the best thing I can do. But when somebody forms an opinion on me, you can go on my TikTok page, and I've been called everything under the sun, and I don't engage. I just say, bless your soul, or thanks for sharing.
You know, here's the thing, right? We'll be coming pretty much an end because the conversation we can go on for hours and hours, but people don't really understand that if they need something stimulating, they need to be able to be around like-minded people, right? If you're the smartest person in the room, you better find another room. Pretty much that's how it is. But the biggest thing that people don't really understand is that when we talk about things, that things are of significance, they're facts. They're not, it's not a challenge. It's not a trend. This trend has been going on forever. The trend is that we're learning. This is what I've learned. This is my observation of today's society, United States. The average American citizen, the average one, don't quote me, but here it is. They're pretty much soft because they haven't been battle tested on it. They've lacked their patriotic beliefs of everything else. They've lost their standards, and they're pretty much looking for things that are pretty much easy. Now, when we're talking about you and me, they'll drop a name and we'll do this and we'll do that, but they overpromise and underdeliver, and I don't deal with that. That's for me, right? I put it out the way it is. I call even out my own veteran brothers and sisters that say we support you, but they don't, because now they've created a life of their own that they don't have time to step out and say, hey, James, you got an issue? Let's talk. Drop me a line. You want to meet? Let's talk. You need to stay somewhere? Let's talk. What's going on with your vehicle? What's going on with your kids? You need a lawyer? What's going on? Those are the type of conversations that people need to understand today on this Marine Corps birthday and Veterans Day. That's the thing, not going out there and getting a sale or going online on Amazon, see how I can create things to be able to get that. That's the way I look at it.
I share your opinion in this, and this is how I would relate to it. The fact is, people will do things if there's a benefit for them. I will go ahead and post this or do this. How many likes, how many shares, what's the equity for me? And they will only do things if there's an equitable return on their investment, whether it's time or resources or money. The goodwill that I believe in, you can agree or disagree. When you're in the Marine Corps, there is this certain esprit de corps and camaraderie that you do for others without expectation of return. I experienced it somewhat in the Navy, but more so in the Marine Corps. And then when you transition from the military, it's even less, a part of our society. And I think that's one of the things that veterans struggle with is you expect this to have the same level in the outside world, and it's not there. And you don't have the camaraderie, you don't have the esprit de corps, you don't have those friendships. Why I enjoy playing rugby, because when I'm on that rugby pitch with my teammates, I'm fighting with them, I'm battling with them. I have that same esprit de corps and camaraderie that I did while I was in the Marine Corps. And that is something that I really enjoy.
So we're wrapping up, James. So what did you get out of this broadcast, and what can you leave the audience with on today's Marine Corps birthday and tomorrow's Veterans Day? What can you say?
What I would say, the message that I have is everybody's going to go out today. They're going to have a couple beers, former Marines, everybody's going to celebrate, oorah, talk about Ton Tavern. Tomorrow, they're going to have a day off. Most people have a day off either today or Monday. Do they really celebrate this? And then on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, is it forgotten? If you really want to support veterans, and it's 24/7, it's 365. I mean, you don't have to live it. It doesn't become a part of your life, but don't forget about it on Monday. If there's something you can do, volunteer your time. Here's my pitch. Go buy this book. And it's not because I'm making money. As a matter of fact, I donate most of the proceeds to charities, and I only make $2.15 on a book. Amazon makes $4 and something cents. Go buy this book, read it, and then give it to somebody. Don't just read the book and say, oh, it was really great. Give it to somebody.
show me the cover, man. So just show them the cover one more time. So talk about that book, and I know it's in the light, but right there, go ahead. You're good right there. Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, the War Journal, a young Marine's discovery of critical life lessons in Desert Storm. And like I said, you can get it on audiobook for $2. What's $2? You spend more for a cup of coffee. Listen to it. Give it to a friend. Give it to someone in need. I wrote this book to help people, and I know it can. And if anything comes out of this podcast, I hope that somebody reads the book and says, I learned something. I learned something about faith. I learned something about relationships and love. I learned something about the value of education. I learned something about betrayal. And then I've won. And this podcast was a success, and I'll be happy.
So if they can find you, James, where can they find you? They find you on LinkedIn?
It's on Amazon. You can search on Amazon, The War Journal, James Sisco, pops right up. And yeah, I'll tell you, it's really cool that if you look at the back cover, this is me getting my gold wings punched into my chest on a drop zone in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina in 1988. So I made this for Marines. The reason it's like $20 is because I put all these color photos in. It's like full page color photos of the deployment. And it brings it to life. It really is. I mean, you can see these are a lot of the photos from the deployment in Desert Storm, and it's just a fun read. And I'll tell everybody, don't expect it to be a war book where there I was killing bad guys. You know, Desert Storm was a 98-hour war, and we only saw a handful of combat missions. And there's some really funny vignettes in here. One of the firefights we were in, I was on the 50 cal. I jumped out of the 50 cal because a staff sergeant had jumped out of his Humvee, thrown his M16 on the ground, and was hiding behind a tire. And I jumped out of the 50 cal, or out of the Humvee. I was manning the 50 cal, ran over and kicked him in the head. Said, get up and get in the vehicle. And funny story is he tried to press charges against me for that on assault. And one of my friends at the recon reunion this year who read the book said, hey, I think I just missed that staff sergeant you wrote in the book about. And it was pretty funny. So there's some funny things in the book too. Some fun things, but really is the critical life lessons that are most important.
All right, my man. Well, it was great chatting with you. So for the people out there in LinkedIn and YouTube, Facebook, if you like this episode of LinkedIn Perspectives, share it, like it, tag it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you like James' presence on the podcast, look up for James Sisco. He's out there with his book. He's the author of The War Journal, and here's what I'll leave you with this, man. It's been great talking to somebody within my own era, right? And I believe that this is a needed talk for the most part that need to be addressed during this time, right? And I'm glad to have you. And this won't be the end of our conversation. I think that we're going to continue doing this. And like I stated before in the phone, this was a much needed conversation today in the Marine Corps birthday and the Veterans holiday, right? So for you people like that, if you like this segment of LinkedIn Perspectives, share it, like it, tag it, stand by, James. And for you guys, Semper Fi, always beside you. I'll be over there at Bastards tonight or in a couple hours, cut the cake, enjoy yourselves. If you're looking to celebrate the Marine Corps birthday, there's 2 locations in Bastards. There's one in Temecula and there's one in Downey. We'll be having it. Doors open today at 12 and they close at 8. So check us out. I'll be doing it live. So Semper Fi, always beside you. Enjoy your Marine Corps birthday. And love that Eagle Gold, man. Very colorful shirt. Semper Fi.
I wore it today.
All right. And we'll enjoy your Veterans Day. Peace out.